myself. I'm Jessica, and I'm a pipeline technical director. I'm currently working as a pipeline supervisor at Mindshop. And the other speaker is Bushra. She's also a pipeline technical director, and she's currently working at Digital Domain. So I'm going to talk a bit about my experience first. So I come from an art background. I was trained as an artist. I work as an artist in 2D and 3D animation before transitioning to being a pipeline TD. I started officially as a pipeline TD around like 2010, so about 11 years ago. But I was doing a bit of development before that, and I slowly transitioned to that role. I work on about over 40 movies and TV shows. You can find some of them on that slide. So I work on things like Avengers, Game of Thrones, Captain America, WandaVision, these type of things. So what does a pipeline TD do? So a pipeline TD basically is, their first role is to ensure that the pipeline, meaning that the OZ tools and the data pipeline that artists use runs smoothly without any issue. A pipeline TD might be developing new tools as well as workflow. And usually that's going to be done very, very closely with the R&D department. So you're going to have like software engineer who are more specialized into R&D working in one department, and pipeline would be the other department. So the one who basically implements the research into actual tools that can be used by the artist. To do that, we also work a lot and very, very closely with the artist. And that's something that a lot of us like. Unlike some more traditional developments where you don't see the user, or you might just like hear about the user from like bug reports or tickets or a product manager, we actually work one-on-one with artists. We sit with them, we come up with solutions with them. So it's a very collaborative environment with all the artists. Something we obviously do a lot is to handle data pipeline. So we need to make sure that doing VFX and animation produce a lot of data. We're talking about terabyte and terabyte of data. And we need to ensure that everything flows nicely, and we can keep track of all of it. We have a lot of dependencies. So one set of data will depend on a lot of other data, and we need to make sense of what is what, and we need to keep track of versions. We typically have teams of from like can range from 30 people to 400, 500, 600 people working on one show. So that's a lot of things to keep track of. I also work personally a lot with data pipeline for machine learning, which is a big thing that started to be used in VFX about 3 to 4 years ago. And so there's a big need of having an even better and more robust data pipeline. And last, we provide technical support and advice for artists. I would say maybe mental support as well. When something breaks and they need to deliver shots, a lot of the time we are the one who step in and help with any sort of technical issue to get stuff moving. We also provide advice, so we are often brought in early on for projects where we basically look at the technical issue that might happen, see if it can be done, if yes, how, and we just provide advice mostly to the supervisors. So the next step is we work as a pipeline TD exactly. Over my career, I found that there was like two main backgrounds. So two main ways to when people like end up working as a pipeline TD. The first one was people like me who basically were trained artists started to code. For me, it was mostly laziness. I didn't want to repeat the same operation over and over. Some people have an interest into like some of the technical aspect of it. So typically it's an artist which is going to slowly transition over. So they will start by doing small scripts to do a few actions to automate their work. And then they're going to transition more and more into actual software, a software developer role. And the other side of it, the other coin, which is like the totally different, is actual people like software engineer who are trained in computer science, mostly with a specialty of computer graphics, 2D or 3D, who basically have an interest into the artistic aspect as well, and they end up as pipeline TD. Sometimes as a pipeline TD, you actually do short work. So there is an opportunity for people who actually come from a computer science background and who want to do a bit of work on movies to actually do a bit of this work. It depends on the size of the team, but typically if you help one of the artists, you might like do a bit of the work as well. Most important, who would like to do this type of work is people who like puzzle solving and being close to the user as well, like I mentioned. A lot of the time, it does involve a lot of various DCCs. And also, like I mentioned, we need to provide advice. So a lot of the time, a director might come and ask for, like, the director will have an idea basically of what they want. So they will come to the studio, talk with the VFX supervisor, and explain what they want to do. And the VFX supervisor will in turn talk with the artist, obviously, but also with us and ask us, is it doable first? If yes, which kind of development do we need and how long will it take? And like I mentioned, we are very, very close to the user. Like when I was not working for mom, I was always sitting next to the user. So I was talking with them every day, and there was a good feedback. Something I want to mention, and that's tying to the other speaker, Bushra. There's a sort of third way, but basically the third way is people who either have like an IT background, a software engineering background, or just an artist background, but a very junior one. They often start as what's called DPA or render wrangler. So there are people who actually manage all the render farms. And most of the time, those people end up working as pipeline TDs. Now I'm going to go over all these specialties. So keep in mind that the specialties are based on the size of the company. Right now I'm working at a smaller company, so I'm touching a bit of everything. In bigger companies, you might be specialized in one or two specialties, but you can move between one or the other. In my career, I moved from animation to rigging to crowd to machine learning, then right now to more core of the pipeline, so build system, database, and so on. Starting with that, you have the core. So the core of the pipeline will be, like I mentioned, build tools. So it's a bit of a DevOps sometimes. So you may have to set up Jenkins, you may have to create some hooks. So when you create a new release, it's going to create some tags in your version control system, these type of things. In the core pipeline, that's typically where you find people who come from a computer science background, but not from a computer graphics specialty of that. Then you have two main parts. So you have the assets and you have the shots. So I'm going to explain those two first before we go into the details. So the assets are, for example, all the character as well as the environment and the props that you may see in the movie. So if we take Thanos, for example, Thanos is an asset. And an asset is considered in multiple parts. You have a model, which is a sort of sculpture of this character. Then you have the rigging side, which is creating the puppet for it. So when you move the arm moves. That's typically when you do solvers like IK, like NFK, forward kinematics and inverse kinematic. And you also have texturing, which is applying some materials on that model. The shot is when you bring everything together, and that's what you see at the end, basically. So you have animation, which is making those puppets move and giving life. So it's kind of like acting, basically. You have the lighting and rendering side, which are often very combined together, which is basically just putting lights everywhere, and the rendering side, which most of you are a bit more familiar with it, would be things like ray tracing and things like that. You have compositing, which is what Bushra specializes in. And basically compositing is kind of like video. It's like Photoshop, but for video. So it's bringing everything together, fixing everything that's need to be fixed, like removing, like if you have a green screen, you just remove the green, seeing that you add some fire, you add some smoke. Typically, for example, if you have a night scene, it might be shot during the day, and it's been converted to a night during compositing. Then you have a few more specialties in the shots part, which are not always done. They are typically more done on bigger projects. So you have effects, which are simulation, so water, smoke, fire, this type of simulation. Then you have CFX, which is character effects. So that would be clothes, hair, these type of things. And you have a few more other specialization, like I mentioned, crowd, and so on. So typically, you will find the big department, like specialties, will be people specializing in modeling and rigging, then texturing. The other one will be animation. So that's a big specialty because we need a lot of animators on those movies. Lighting is a big specialty, and that's also what typically you would find people who have a computer science background with a computer graphics specialty. It's a bit more technical than the other specialties. Compositing, that's a lot of 3D basically. There is a bit of 3D. So those compositing software have a lot of 3D components, and Bushra, I can chime in on that later. But it's mostly 2D. So if you like any sort of computer science with dealing with 2D, like image and stuff, that's something you might be interested. And FX and TFX, obviously simulation. So that's rigid bodies and things like that. And typically, you also have within all of those specialties, so by department, you're going to have specialties by interest and skills. So within within a big company, you may have like a big pipeline TD department, and you may have like 2, 3, or 4 people who support the animation department. But within this group, you may have different specialties, basically. So you have people who are more interested and more skilled into implementing algorithm. So that would be typically people who do deformers and things like that. That's very fun. And if you like math, that's perfect. A lot of linear algebra on that. You did a lot with matrices and vectors and stuff like that. The other part is tools and data pipeline. So tools can be a bit of everything. It's really like we often ask, oh, I need a tool, like I'm doing this action all the time and I need a tool to do it automatically. So it could be something to handle like I want to know what's in my scene. So you might do tools to detect what's in your scene and present this stuff to artists in a nice way. The data pipeline will be, like I've said, getting data in, out, and export it. So you might go from a DCC like Blender or Maya And you might have to export to different formats which are supported by other DCCs. So that's how you connect things together. So you may have to export to Alembic, which is an open source format that we love a lot, to export point information. You might export to USD, which is like a universal scene description, so listing everything in your scene. You might export to an OBJ, maybe you're a bit more familiar with that, or a C3D, or an SBX, and so on. And the last part is support. So some people do more or less support, some people love supporting the artists. So typically, if you're more on the junior side, you might do a bit more support. It's a very, very good way to learn. But basically, the artists contact you and they say, hey, I have a problem. Or like I say, like they reach out to you for advice. They say, I want to do that, I don't know how to do it. Can you help me out? So you go and you talk with them, and you're going to help them achieve what they need. And most of the time, everything is mix and match. That really depends on the studio size. Like I said, right now I'm working in a very small studio, so we do a bit of everything, which is great because we can dabble a bit of everything. The drawback is that we can't really specialize necessarily in one part because we need to obviously touch a bit of everything. In bigger studio, I work at, you can really go very deep into specialization. For example, like I work for many years on a machine learning based facial capture system. So that was very specialized, very interesting. But then I was just only doing that. So it might not work for everybody. And now we're going to do a case study of which kind of development we've done for Avengers Infinity War. So I'm going to show you a small clip of behind the scenes, and then I'm going to talk about 3 of the tools. 2 of them which were developed specifically for Avengers, and 1 which was used a lot, with mostly a focus on Thanos, obviously, because Thanos was the big thing for Infinity War. We work a lot with Benjamin Button. And when I was at Digital Man, there was a huge history with all the work done on Benjamin Button and Maleficent to create realistic humans. But Infinity War is the one where we really crank stuff up. And that's when we introduced machine learning.
The stone demands a sacrifice.
What?
You must lose that which you love.
Dread it. Run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. And now it's here. Or should I say, I am. Life is left unchecked. Life will cease to exist. I'm the only one who knows that. At least I'm the only one with the will to act on it. You should have gone for that.
Okay, so that was some of the work we've done. Obviously, like I said, there was a big focus on Thanos, and we basically with Thanos we first introduced what is called Masquerade. So Masquerade is a machine learning-based facial capture system, which consisted at the time of a CNN network and a pipeline to go on that. So basically, what we've done, we capture Josh Brolin's face. We drew a lot of markers on him. We use an head-mounted camera. So it was two cameras were looking at the top and the bottom of his face. And so we captured that, and from that we generated a series of markers in C3D. We also, apart from that, we also put Josh Brolin in a light machine. Like we basically capture all of his facial expression. It was done by a company called ICT, which is in Playa Vista. So we capture all of his facial expression, and we use those facial expression to create the model of Thanos. So the idea was to basically bring a bit of Josh Brolin face into Thanos' face to give a bit this big extra of like realism to it. And so we could basically have an high fidelity transfer of Josh Brolin expression into Thanos. And that's what gave Thanos like these tiny things make him believable, hopefully. So basically we got those markers. At the time it wasn't semi-automatically, meaning that we had a bunch of artists who had to go and fix those markers. That was later on done automatically with both CNN and a GAN system with a more robust pipeline. And we basically, from that, we cleaned those markers with our network, and we basically create a face mask of it. Then we transfer this face mask into the puppet. So we basically drive the puppet with that face mask using, again, a network. So we basically found, okay, if Josh do a smile, we found which expression is the credits for Thanos, like for that specific smile. When it's done, we add another system, which basically was converting this mask, like this model, into a bunch of controllers. So on the puppet, so we can basically we gave the ability to animators to tweak and change the performance of it. Sorry, 2 seconds. So yeah, about that. So we give the ability for animators to go and extend the performance and of Thanos when it was needed. And aside from that, we also generated a bunch of data that were saved as Anambic, which I briefly mentioned was a point saving system, like format, sorry. So that was the big thing done for Infinity War. And that one made Marvel say, okay, we can do Thanos, it's doable. Another big thing, and you might have seen it in that video, was a muscle system. So it's called SMIT. And SMIT is a rapid and robust solver for elastic deformation. So meaning any kind of like collision and strain limits and things like that. So basically the rigging department is going to go and create all the muscle, attach those muscle to the puppet. So when the puppet move, those muscles move. So part of SMIT is to actually make the muscle simulate how muscle should work. And on top of that, we convert the model and we like using a deformer, and it just behaves as like a skin on top of this muscle. So we get hyper realistic like skin sliding and things like that whenever Thanos was moving. Something to note about that, we also add another system which was on top of that to do a lot of like hair on top of Thanos. So like if you look very closely, if you like freeze frame, you can see like Thanos' face have a lot of hair actually, like very tiny little hair. So that gives an extra layer of realism. And another tool that I want to mention, it's called AnimViz, and basically it's a GPU-based shot prioritization system, which was developed for Infinity War and expanded a bit more, especially for Endgame. And that's a good example between Masquerade, Smith, and AnimViz. So Masquerade, it's very much brand new, machine learning based, very experimental. Smith, lot of math. It's a simulation software, basically. AnimViz was developed by one of our two of our TDs, one called Bruno and the other Kenneth. And basically it was a system to gather everything done. So things done by animation, things done like fire done by FX, cross simulation done by CFX, and all the lights coming from the lighting department, and bring them all together and basically using a GPU renderer quickly render the scene. So like very quick, like actually each frame was like taking like a couple of seconds and generate a prioritization of the final shot for the director. So that really helped the director as well as the supervising team to see how the shot will look like at the end. So, and that's a very good example of like a simpler tool done by the pipeline department, but which touch a lot of stuff. So they had to create a custom UI, which like with graph and things like that. They had to handle all the data. So the data pipeline around it was rather big because they had to gather every source, possible source, making sure that they bring the proper version of it and so on. And then finally send that to the farm. And if you have more questions about the farm, Bushra can answer that. She was the DPA on that show. Send that to the farm and basically quickly get the render out. And when we got this render out, adding a few information to it just to help. So meaning like which shot it was and also gathering all the data, like which version of the animation it was and which version of the rig and so on. Yeah, sorry, I knew there was one more slide. So before we do the Q&A, I have a few final words, mostly about how to find a job and so on. So I really encourage you to check out SIGGRAPH. So SIGGRAPH is going to happen early August, and it will be either in LA or remote for people who are not in California. And you can also check out a bunch of open source initiatives done by VFX and animation. So there's a lot of them. I did make a list on the GitHub for Women Who Code Python. You can take a look. And I'm going to talk a bit about some of them. So you have OpenEXR. So OpenEXR, it's a very, very nice image format that you can basically include a lot of data in it. And same, if you have some question about it, Bushra know a bit more about it than me. QtPy is a very, very interesting, tiny little library, very simple, but will really help a lot. So it's basically a layer on top of PySide and PyQt, which is used a lot in VFX and animation. And we can basically we can basically do the import. Instead of doing import PySide or import PyQt, we just do import Qt. And this little module will handle converting back and forth between the two libraries as well as between Qt5 and Qt4. You have OpenSubdiv, which is developed by Pixar, which is very, very nice library to do subdivision on measures. A few other stuff that you may have, like I mentioned Alembic, which is like a data format to save point information. You have a lot of open source initiatives which are actually actively used in studios. So a lot of them actually were developed by studios and then open sourced after, and they often become industry standard. No big questions like how to find and where to find a papa and TD position. Typically, most of us get our jobs through LinkedIn. So a lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn, and you can basically add them. You can also go to VFX Animation Studio website, and I put a list, same on the GitHub. So you can just go to the studio, see if there's any kind of like open position, and just apply there. And another good location for it is obviously SIGGRAPH. There's like a job board, and there's like a lot of recruiters will go to SIGGRAPH to recruit. Right now, the industry as a whole have a very big need for TDs. So a lot of studio are recruiting. I'm recruiting somebody if anybody's interested. And I'm sure that the studio that Bushra is working at is also recruiting. Okay, so now we're going to go into the Q&A. So you can ask questions for me or for Bushra, and based on your question, either of us will reply. So I'm going to see if there is any question from. So there is a question from Luis John, who asks, what are the biggest problem you come across with the whole process from shot to finish shot? There are situations where you can't get the effect you need with the footage available, or do DPs have a smooth understanding of your needs? Yeah, that's a good question. So we see there is always problem happening. That comes with the field, basically. Like especially when you reach a certain level, like things are new, they are always new, and so in terms of like, sometimes we can't do the effects, so we cheat. Basically, it's at the end of the day, we create movies, and in movies, especially for special effects, be them practical or visual, we cheat a lot. So we might put stuff in the dark, so you don't see all the details. That was a big thing that people were doing, especially with practical effects before the advance of visual effects. Keeping stuff in the dark. DVDs were nice as well, because like the resolution was not as great, so it was easier to hide stuff. In terms of problem that we encounter, obviously dealing with like such a big amount of artists across different specialties and across various countries and studios. So like most of the time, if you look at a movie like Avengers, if you look at the end, you're going to see like a huge list of people, and you're going to see that it's not just one company who do those effects; it's a lot of companies. So how to handle like exchanging data it's a big problem. It's like there's a lot, and this data is huge, so there's a lot of issue we can come up with, like how to exchange the data, and also a lot of companies may have proprietary software or plugins, and how to exchange data with another studio is sometimes a bit of an issue. But we get there, and we create tools to convert stuff back and forth, and that's also why we adopt a lot of those open source standards like Alembic or USD and so on. That just makes the transfer process smoother, basically, between DCCs and between studios. And obviously, there's a lot of things we can go wrong. Maybe a modeler did, like the image that a modeler did, like have some issue in it, and you might not see it until animation or even rendering when you try to render. So the prevision system I mentioned is a good thing to catch this type of issues. As for the needs, usually you're going to have like two types of people. Like you're going to have the VFX supervisor, which is basically going to take the director vision and translate it into reality, so more on the artistic side. And you have often working alongside them a CG supervisor. So a CG supervisor is somebody who is a bit more technical, and which is going to handle the technical side of it. And like I mentioned, we we can make some artistic choice based on the problem we encounter, basically. So I hope that answers your question. Maybe Bushra can chime in a bit about that one.
Hello. There's the Q&A field that has a bunch of good questions, Jessica. If you want to take a look, and then I can chime in as well.
Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, so somebody asked about the list of other sites sitting in this talk. You can find it in the Women Who Code Python GitHub. I have the address after the MA. Bushra, can you answer like Nicole Keller question maybe? If you are still running coding in Python, where would you recommend starting if you're interested in this career?
So for this question, yes, before coming to the studio, I didn't know Python. I knew C language and C# and C++, but I had no knowledge in Python. So what I did was, maybe that's not really a perfect example, but I looked at the code. They all have the same foundation, the same basic structure. What I did was looked at people's code and then learned online as I go. So websites would be, I can't remember. There's like a lot of websites that you can find for Python. So there's this one called Joma class. I'll type it for you.
And while she's typing, I can chime in a bit. So in my case, I was working as an artist, and I just started to. So Maya have a script editor, what's called the script editor. So every time you do an action, you're going to see the code used to perform this action in their own language called Mail. So Maya embedded language. So I started to look at it, and I started to just like take it and just like copy paste it, make a few changes, and see what's going to happen. Then they started to introduce Python, so I just similar than Bushra, but just looking at other people's code and trying to figure out how it goes. I've read a few books as well, like Python 101, and the Python documentation is a very good source as well. I found,
yeah,
but it was like very much trial and error, and
exactly.
And as I got more experience and my skill increased, and then I was able to learn like more complex things, mostly dealing with linear algebra and stuff like that.
Yeah, just trial and error is the best way to learn, and it sticks in your head. There's Nada asking, is there a difference between 3D animation and pipelines techniques?
Not really. Basically, the pipeline is, when we mention the pipeline, it's to do 3D animation. Basically, it's there's a like I mentioned, like a lot of people come from an artist background. Like for me, I was more specialized into rigging and animation. So it's pretty much like how to how to get the model going from modeling to rigging, texturing, and animation all the way to the final render. So it's just like a set of tools and a data pipeline to do 3D animation. In terms of difference between VFX and animation itself, there is not so much difference. In 3D animation, obviously, you don't deal with compositing as much. You do a bit of compositing, but you don't deal with integrating a plate as well as realistic elements to it. You deal with like you need to deal with like a bit more complex issue of how to take projects are a bit longer, so it's like how to improve on the story while a project is being done. So that's a big difference in terms of VFX and 3D animation. And you also need to deal with like sometimes more assets, but that's not always the case. One of the movies I worked on where the most asset was there was a movie with The Rock where like there's some earthquake happening. Oh, San Andreas. That one had like thousands and thousands of assets, and I was a rigging lead at the time as well, and I was losing my mind with like how many assets there was. And in the end, I developed a system to automatically rig most of those assets.
I think
Rachel,
Stephanie would like
you
to.
go ahead. You go ahead.
Sorry.
Bushra.
I'm just marking it for you as you're answering questions.
Okay. Sure. Go on, Jessica. Sorry.
So Rachel M asked if there was a technical challenge when I was working on a movie that I thought might not be possible to overcome at the beginning of a project, but which you and your team have managed to find a solution for in the end. Actually, there was a recent one. There've been a few, but a recent one I remember very well, talking about Infinity War. So we work on Masquerade for Infinity War. We've done a basic pipeline, and we keep improving on it. So we added a few more system, like something to automatically track markers, something to automate like creating those shapes and things like that. And the process was like rather automated, but one of the challenge was that I was working very, very closely with the R&D department, and things were changing all the time as we found new technology and new use of that technology. And one of the challenge was at one point, so at the time, we needed maybe a team of like 7 people to do 40 minutes of footage over 8 months. And someone came, like a AAA studio came to us and say, we want to have that, but we need to do 50 hours over 8 characters. And so basically we had to spend a lot of time automating the whole process. And at the end, like we did manage to do it, but there was a lot of issue with like managing the farm. Basically, it's like we can't give the farm too many jobs to do, otherwise the farm is just going to go down, as Bushra can probably remember.
Yep.
Those few times. So yeah, it's like how to automate things and send stuff to the farm without taking the farm down. That was a big technical challenge, and also like the sheer amount of footage that they wanted us to do. It's like how can a small team, even like a team of 4 people, can do like 50 hours of footage in maybe a year over 8 characters and semi-automatically. So that was a big challenge. And a lot of part came from like both some machine learning based solution and improving the data pipeline as well. So yeah. Maybe Bushra can talk about one of the technical issues she encountered.
So there is like a lot of challenges that you will definitely face a lot of challenges. The way that you will be able to overcome those challenges really depends on how good your team is, and like if you go to an expert, someone who has seen this issue before or who has encountered it before, always feel strong or like not shy about asking questions. Yeah, Jessica already mentioned like most of the challenges that we faced, especially on a show like Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah, another challenge I can mention, like a simpler one, but where the time constraint was on San Andreas. Basically, they had a rig which was just a bot with the actor on, and the rig was constrained. It was not moving. Basically, the rig was able to turn. The rig was able to turn, but that's it. And actually, he was somebody who had to grab the bot and just run run around to turn the bot. And this bot, if you look at the final scene, you can see it. You have The Rock on a bot who would just basically go through San Francisco and just like go over all the city, which like all the debris and things like that. So we had to make a system, and very quickly, because I was going on vacation a few weeks after, so I had to come up with something like in 2 weeks. But basically, we were taking the previsation done. So often on those big movies, like we use other 3D software to do a previsation of the movie that enables the director to see the angle, and that gives the whole team who makes the movie like a clear idea of what to do. But we had to take this previsation done. So in 3D space with the bot moving, and we had to convert this bot into sort of 2D space, and also into a way like where the bot is not going to move, but only the camera is going to move. So the camera was moving, but the bot wasn't moving. Well, in the end shot, it looked like the camera isn't moving, but the bot is moving. So that was a big challenge on how to take this previsation, like the camera movement and the bot, and translate them into the rig, and also then translate them back from it. So from the 2D plates, how to track the bot and translate this stuff back into 3D. Let's see if there's any other question. So there is one who say that they are a software engineer with about 5 years of experience, mostly in back on web dev, and they were a surfacing artist, which is kind of like texturing, basically, sort of, for animation and VFX. They tried to apply for a render pipeline role, but they were told that because they didn't have a C++ experience, they didn't get the role. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry for you. And they asked which other role to target, and what language requirements are a bit less stringent, and if I have any recommendation on good project or class to learn compiled language. So in the VFX industry and animation as well, the main language for pipeline will be Python. Most of the DCs support Python, most of the open source libraries support Python, and the other language would be C++. But as C++ is not used as much, I would say like as a pipeline TD, I use C++ maybe 10% of the time, and it's when I need speed. Like if I write a deformer, I'm going to use C++. I'm going to prototype the deformer in Python though most of the time, and I'm going to do it in C++. So yeah, learning Python would be the number one. In terms of which specialties to target, I would say animation, TD would be a good one. Compositing as well, even though it's a bit different because it's more 2D. And yeah, just like general pipeline work, basically. So just like targeting, like just do support and things like that. So learning one of the main DCCs like Maya is a good choice as well. And in terms of classes or project to work on, I don't know if I have a recommendation about classes. There's no real classes about how to be a pipeline TD. It's more you learn on the job, and you learn from people who are more senior than you. I would say right now it's a good time to get a job as a pipeline TD if you know how to code in Python, and if you know how to use like something like Blender or Maya, either Maya or Nuke for compositing. You can probably get your foot in. For example, like when I'm looking for a junior pipeline TD at the studio I work at, and I'm open to either an artist who know how to code a bit, or somebody who have a strong engineering background and who want to learn how to use other animation software. So it really depends on the studio. Typically, a smaller studio, we need people who know the DCC a bit better. A bigger studio might have a bit more role for somebody who studied computer science, who's a software engineer, and who want to transition into it. It really depends also on your linear algebra skills. So if you have a lot of linear algebra skills, you can maybe target rigging or lighting. typically rendering is a bit more advanced, and that they want people who have a bit more experience for when it comes for the renderer. So there is not that many roles. If you really want to tackle like a render engine, there's not that many. It's a bit harder basically for that. Don't know if Bushra, do you have any? Bushra have a very good experience in terms of like how to get in, coming from being a DPA, so like somebody who managed the farm. She went from being a lead DPA to being an assistant TD, and maybe she have some more information about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to answer the other questions. It's very similar. How easy is it to get your foot on in the door? So it depends really. Like Jessica mentioned, if you want to apply right now, this is a good time where you get accepted because people like studios are looking for TDs and whatever you're comfortable in doing. My experience was, and the way I got my foot in the door, I applied to an entry-level job first, which was the render wrangler. And at the studio I work with, they do more than just render wrangling. So I did that for a year and a half, and then second year I learned Python, and I was like very like excited about learning Python and debugging and troubleshooting, and that's where I started like looking at how I can automate things. How do I write tools? How do I make things better? And then from there, people started noticing that, okay, she's developing tools. Maybe we can put her in a different role. And that's how you get your foot in the door. Like you first start with an entry level, even if it doesn't, it's not very like it's not what you want, but it might open up something that you might be interested in like later on. So render wrangling would be a good area to look into. Junior TD would be also a good example or a position where you can start from.
Yeah, like being a render wrangler, that's really like the best position if you want to get a foot in the door with no experience. Like if you know how to manage a machine a bit, like, and if you have a bit of cloud experience or so on, like then it's extremely easy to get in, and then you can quickly move to a pipeline TD position. Typically, people who are render wrangler don't stay there very long. And there's many examples of people that I know who, like Bushra, started as a render wrangler and work as a software engineer or pipeline TD. There's another one at the same studio that Bushra is working at who she started as a render wrangler, and now she's actually a technology product manager after being a very successful software engineer. How is it to get your foot in the door? It really depends. So basically, it's very cyclic. As you may know, like you have big release of movies happening most of the time. Right now, you have the summer flicks, and like Black Widow, we actually work on it, and you also have new one during winter time. So typically, you're going to have like a period of like you're going to have a lot of position available, and other period where you have less. When you're a pipeline TD, it's a bit more stable, so typically they keep you on board for a while or permanently. How it is for me, it was rather easy. I found that. Keep in mind that was like a while ago. That was over a decade ago. But I found that as an artist, I was able to code a bit, and slowly I was able to basically get my foot in the door for like easier developer pipeline TD position, and then to bigger place doing more complex work. So that was a long process, but basically to get in was rather easy. Just it just took a while to reach a certain level where I feel comfortable to go into like various specialty and also supervising the department. I would say, yeah, if you know Python and if you know a bit of computer animation, especially right now, it's rather easy. Convincing that studio, like if you don't have any artist experience, convincing studios might be a bit more tricky, but I think right now they are open to a lot of various background, basically. So if there's any more question. Rachel, like kind of like have a similar question, like how do you apply? Yeah, just basically I put a list, like I say on GitHub of studios and so on. Just go and apply. Like maybe go to SIGGRAPH. There's like you can find like you can often find like a free a code for a free entrance to the part of SIGGRAPH will give you access to the job fair. So you can go check out that. In bigger VFX places like London, Vancouver, Montreal, LA, you often have job fair as well. And often, like if you come and say, "Oh, I'm interested to be in a pipeline TD," there's not that many of us. It's a very in-demand position, so like they will talk with you and they will consider you, especially if you like if you're starting as a junior. They'll be more flexible on that.
Someone asked, please say all the possible skills
Yeah.
you
So
have to learn for this
basically,
job.
for that, you need problem solving skills. That's the biggest and most important one. A lot of the time, you're going to have to open an artist scene and figure out like what's wrong in their scene. Or you're going to have to figure out like how to go from point A to point B. So maybe going from Maya to 3ds Max, how to transfer the model from one to the other, this type of things, and how to basically apply your knowledge as well as the tools that you have to solve a problem, like how to do a specific effect. Like I mentioned the bot stuff on San Andreas. That was a good example of problem solving. It's like I was given a scene with a camera and a bot, and I had to use my linear algebra skills, as well as if you do that, as well as Maya internal tools to come up with a way to convert all the information into a custom data format. I think it was XML based, something like that. And then read this stuff back and retranslate again. Same using Maya. So I had to know a bit of like how Maya work, but also how to use linear algebra. Another big thing is because you're going to have to do a lot of support most of the time when you're a junior, you want to have some people skills as well. That's very important. When you talk with the artists, like most of the time, like some of them will be very technical, some of them won't be technical. So you need to be able to adapt how you talk to them based on their technical skills. And you also need often to reach out to them when they have an issue. You need to ask them, like, how did you got this issue? And can you give me some reproduction steps? What do you want to achieve? Like, and you also need to work with production, meaning that there is sometimes a deadline when you do some sort of support. So maybe they need to finish the shot before end of week because the episode is airing like 2 days later. So yeah, you do have a time constraint, and you need to, and that's when the problem solving skills come into play. Where like you need to basically find a solution, even if it's not something pretty or nice, which is one of the advantages compared to a more traditional development, is that at the end of the day, we just do movies and we just need to get some image out. So yeah, basically we have a lot of leeway on how to solve issues. And sometimes you might just write a quick script to just do something very specific just for one shot. And your social skills will basically mean that you can handle talking with production, which is probably going to be very stressed, as well as the artist who's probably going to be very, very stressed. And also solving the situation at the same time. So you need some, like, you need to be able to talk to them, reassure them that things is going to be okay. don't really have this situation in hand, and I will find a solution. And most of the time, what I like to do is like I like to give them multiple deadline, meaning that okay, I can get something out dirty by that date. I can do something a bit better by that date. That's usually helps them a bit relax. And in terms of other skills that you might want to learn, that depends on what you specialize in. Obviously, if you do rigging animation, you want to have like good linear algebra skills because you're going to deal with matrices and vectors a lot. If you do more core pipeline, you want to have more like kind of like DevOps backend skills, meaning like how to create a database. Like you may want to know Jenkins. You may want to know like a bit about like a compiler, like how to create a makefile and things like that. And for compositing, actually, I'm going to let Bushra answer that. Which kind of skills do you need when you want to specialize in 2D or compositing?
So for me, there's really nothing that special. Like you have to know a little bit about the production or the VFX pipeline. So you have to have an idea of what the industry you're in, obviously. And then the skills that you need to have is basically you're always learning. Like you need to have the skill that I'm there to learn, or I'm there to like do something creative or good or like beneficial. So the skill that you want to have is just ability to learn. You're always like trying to learn something new. Also, you have to have some patience, especially like when you're dealing with someone else remotely. Also, like Jessica mentioned, talking to people. I find VFX is not, IT usually don't have that much of people skills, but in this industry, you'll need to have it because you're always talking to artists, supervisors. So you need to have that, be comfortable talking to people. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what you need to have.
Yeah, we're going to answer one last question before ending the talk because I just realized
we're 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, we're already a bit over. So Rachel asked, do you find the industry welcome diversity in this type of position? Would you say it's actively trying to recruit diverse team? That's a very interesting topic, and that's why I wanted to actually answer that question before we wrap up. I found that there was it's basically, the industry is very male dominated, unfortunately, especially on the technical department like pipeline. Most of the time, you're going to be the only woman in the team, or there won't be that many. It's changing a lot. Like when I compare like 10 years ago to right now, there is way more women. Like most of the time I was the only one, but right now I'm not anymore. In terms of diversity, like there's a lot of people, like people who come from very different countries, very different culture. So there is some issue with like people, not of men in the industry, mostly, but I haven't encountered like a lot of. I found that the industry as a whole was like rather open, like to a different culture, and like there's no dress code, for example, like just don't be naked, I guess, and don't smell. But it's been pretty okay, and it's changing a lot, thankfully. So like, yeah, but I found that like working in this industry, I made friends in a lot of countries. Basically, like I have friends who come from Taiwan, who come from the US, come from Europe, like me as well. Or like South Africa and so on. So there's some sort of diversity, but it could be better, I would say. And there's always obviously a sort of like boys club feeling still, but it's changing a lot for the better. And that's going to wrap up the talk. So I want to thank women who gave me the opportunity to talk about the pipeline TV role. I want to thank Bushra as well for coming in with their experience, which is very interesting and a bit of a contrast with mine. And if you want me to do more talks talking about animation, maybe some specific stuff on like how to write a deformer or something like that, just let us know. Like I mentioned, you can go to a Woman Who Code GitHub, and you can, or you can go to my GitHub profile, and you can find additional resource. So I compile a list of studio as well as open source project you can look at. And if you have any more questions that you didn't want to ask, or maybe you think about it later on, just feel free to send me an email, and I will try to answer it to you.